Third part. I don't really understand what you're saying. In the span of that one remark, the doctor's brain was cycling through thousands of questions and answers. What are you saying? What do you mean by new life? New in what sense? How is that considered life? And the answer came from a pitch-black region of the mind yet unmapped by cerebral physiology. D. Do you mean to say becoming one of the nobility is a form of living? Perhaps it's a new life. Don't kid me. Vera smacked her right fist down on the armrest. And though a sharp pain ran all the way up to her shoulder, she didn't notice it. Her whole body was hot. She wasn't even aware that this was due to anger. And just how did you reach that conclusion? Those who are bidden by nobles and join their ranks, they share the same loathsome thirst for blood and seek it out. If that's not a demon, what is? Your kind also dines, do they not? Nobles drink blood. Where's the difference? There's a huge difference. They drink human blood. The person they feed on dies once, and then they become one of them. They'll never know rest for all eternity. Dying and then rising again? You wouldn't call that a new life. It's not life. Nobles and their former victims aren't alive, but they're not dead either. They're known forevermore as the living dead. What of the nobles, then? Dee inquired in a tone that remained as still as a winter's night. That, there, Vera began, but she had nothing after that. Do you know whether or not they too have died and come back? Have you ever considered this? If they were dead from the very start, yet they moved and thought, and even created a civilization, wouldn't you consider them a new form of life? The doctor shook her head vehemently. Her thoughts wouldn't gel. Dee expressed a view that she couldn't deny had occurred to her before. However, now she would give anything to crush that heretical doctrine. Nobles can't walk in the light of day. There are exceptions. Nobles sleep through the day in coffins, and humans sleep through their nights in beds. They drink human blood. Humans eat meat. But when they take a life, it can't rise again. The life that rises again is cursed, just like the nobility. Condemning the existence of the nobility without understanding them isn't the sort of thing anyone who professes to be a person of science should be doing. I know the nobility better than anyone. Vera's voice suddenly became low. My mother was employed in a noble's mansion. They paid her salary, and they promised her that no one would suck her blood. The master of the house kept that promise. But the first time one of his guests laid eyes on my mother, well, she tried to run, but her throat was torn open and she died. I'll never forgive the nobility. My, a hoarse voice remarked in amazement. In the clever eyes of the doctor, hatred swirled in dark whirlpools. Instances of nobles hiring humans for a set period of time and then returning them to their homes were extremely rare outside the capital. In the present era, when the meanings of the terms BC and AD had been lost, records existed of the contracts entered into from the year 5000 to 7500, with the stipulation that blood not be drunk, and the number of humans employed by the nobility in that time frame totaled 7,628 for the entire frontier. A large number of contracts were destroyed by noble-hating humans, so precise numbers weren't available. But roughly 95% of those contracts were satisfactorily completed. A fact that was in those days, and in the present as well, a major blow to scholars of the anti-noble faction. At that time, The traditional view that the nobility saw human beings only as food was badly shaken. However, for all the scholars of the pro-noble faction who asserted that the nobility's cruelty and blood-drinking were an inescapable destiny imprinted in their very DNA, some 2,300 years later, new excavations had unearthed truths that came as a great shock. Thanks to other contracts in the journals of nobles from that same time frame, it became known that for every contract completed satisfactorily, 3 times as many had been horribly breached. After that, the anti-noble faction's predominance was unshaken, and continued so in the present day. As far as humans were concerned, the nobility were demons who'd ruled over them for nearly 10 millennia. "They're the same," Dee said, his voice flowing out in a low tone. As always, it was cold and boundlessly dark. Science isn't satisfied with merely observing phenomena. It's the spirit of finding the truth that lies behind them, and demonstrating facts. You might even say it's supported by the imagination. Have you never considered, Doctor, that it's possible for nobles and humans to live together? Huh? Vera replied, apparently dumbstruck. Excuse me, what? The doctor shook her head fiercely. Wait just a minute. Not once have I. Don't lie. The doctor froze. These words would gouge at her heart and lungs, turning blood to ice before it could spray forth. I'm not lying. You're wrong. Why do you think I'd lie? I can tell from the way you've been looking at this guy ever since we met. The doctor blinked stupidly. Dee's voice had become the hoarse tone of another person entirely. Your average person just kind of loses himself in the sight. But underneath that, there's a fear they can't hide. A racial memory carved into humans' bones. Not even you can do anything about that. But the way you look at him is different. You've got the look of someone who understands him. Fundamentally different from those in the pro-noble school, who are merely superficial. You have the eyes of one who struggled to understand the true nature of the nobility, and ultimately wrested free of the truth. Even the tragedy that's befallen you can't shake that. No matter what evil purpose it might be put to, the truth of E equals MC squared doesn't change. You know it. Vera was stunned. It took her a good 10 seconds before she could say anything. No. Now that's a lie. As long as I live, I'll hate. Her body began to tremble. The shaking grew finer and finer still, and then her body became a blur. She had surpassed the limits of the human body's ability to shake. What in the world is she? The hoarse voice muttered in amazement. The physical and mental transformation brought on through molecular vibrations? I've never seen the like. What was taking place in the body of that ordinary country doctor? At any rate, the shaking gradually subsided. Her blurred outlines resolved into one. The tremors themselves ceased, and Vera flopped back against the sofa. What the hell? Don't make such a fuss over her. Despite the hoarse voice's objections, Dee picked Vera up and laid her flat on the sofa. Leave her be, dirty little tease. The voice grumbled. When the spirit and flesh separate, do they both stay the same as they were before? Dee asked. Nope. Some say they become like a whole different person, but I haven't seen for myself. In what way? Let me see. The most ordinary woman in the world could turn into the greatest liar of all time? Or something like that, I guess. Nothing from the hunter. This is serious. Like holding a snake to your bosom.
One of them's a woman and a warrior at the same time. The other is a doctor. Both of them consciously hate vampires. One alone could be trouble. But if the two of them were to team up, that's about as dangerous as it comes. Why not put her down here and now?
As Dee was squeezing his hand into a fist, Lilia and Dust came running in, having sensed something unusual. They had longsword and club in hand. As for Cray, it seemed he was sleeping. "What in blazes happened?" Dust asked. Looking down at where the semi-conscious Vera lay on the sofa.
"Not a thing," said the hoarse voice. "She's sleeping like a baby."
"What? I got up for this," said Lilia, letting out a great yawn. No sooner had the killing lust left Dust than Dee asked, "Do you hear that?"
"Hear what?"
Lilia listened intently, then blinked a few times and said, "Nothing."
"What? Is there something outside?"
"I can't see anything," Dust said with a shake of his head as he peered out the window. "Must have imagined it."
"Must have imagined it."
At that hoarse remark, Lilia shrugged her shoulders.
"Troublemaker. If you're going to put the bite on someone, try to keep it quiet."
"And the doc, what happened to her?" Dust asked from beside the sofa.
"Just a tad anemic,"
the hoarse voice replied.
"She'll be fine soon."
"That's not it. It's not anemia. With that color in her face," Lilia interrupted. Training a sharp gaze on Vera's neck, she continued, "Her carotid artery is fine, but just to be safe, she should be stripped naked and checked. After all, we're dealing with a Dhampir here." "You did this to her?" Dust's eyes gleamed. "I suppose I did," Dee replied, this time in his own voice. "When the doctor wakes up, I'm going to ask her what happened. Depending on the answer, you might be in a world of hurt." His rough hands tightened on his club. "Nothing happened," Vera said, sitting up on the sofa. "You okay, Doc?" Dust asked, stealing a glance at her before quickly returning his gaze to Dee. "Just a little anemic. I'm not much good in the cold. Lilia, I'll think you to choose your words more carefully." "What's this? You're on his side all of a sudden." "That must be because he's so damn handsome." "Excuse me?" The doctor's wrathful countenance made the warrior woman shrug her shoulders. "Okay, I'm sorry. That was out of line. But, Mr. Bodyguard, you should look the doctor over from head to toe." Swishing her tail, the huntress returned to her room. "You can go too, Dust, but I'll be fine. He doesn't seem to have much interest in humans, particularly in women." Vera was even able to smile at that. "Surely they don't really suspect he's sucked my blood, do you?" The giant of a man gave Dee a withering glare, looked once again at Vera, then promptly left. "Ain't that a cold guard man?" "Ain't that a cold guard man? We've got a vampire panic here. I need to walk away from the culprit and the victim." At the disgusted tone of the hoarse voice, a bitter grin rose to Vera's lips. "It's okay. Don't trouble yourself about it. Forget that. What could have happened to me?" "Nothing. You just fainted from anemia. You should call it a night. I'll sleep out here." "I really do like this voice better than the other one," Vera said, scratching her head. "And you intend to watch over the child as well. But you're the one who needs to rest. Doctor's orders. Have it your way." As if his previous remark about sleeping there had been a fabrication, Dee headed for the door. He stepped out into the hall. It wasn't a narrow passageway. One touch of a switch on the wall and window opened, or rather, it came into being. Sunlight, Loathing Noble still liked to enjoy the night scenery. However, the existence of windows would let in the light of day. This was the resulting compromise. Gazing out at a world with a blizzard raged like a crazed white demon, the hoarse voice said, "They're out there, aren't they? Tomorrow our trip's gonna be rough." Naturally, there was no reply. No matter what kind of trip it was, it could do nothing to deter this gorgeous young man from his course. Or so his silence seemed to declare. The window closed. A number of presents inside it stayed frozen while Dee gazed at them and finally began wriggling around it in the snow again, but were immediately swallowed up by the howling blizzard. Chapter 3, End.